The intention of the community farm is to create a place where all members of our community can meet and feel welcome. It's also to grow plants for food in an ecologically sound way. It's also to learn and share knowledge and skills about growing fruit, veggies, herbs, bush tucker, flowers in a sustainable, natural environment. And as well, we would like to regenerate the site. Organic gardening starts with the nourishment of the soil, leading to the nourishment of the plant, and then ultimately to the nourishment of our bodies. So lots of people are starting to realise the taste of some of the food in the supermarket is not as good as it should be. The reason I'm interested in growing organic food is to keep the chemicals off my plate. I find organic food quite expensive to buy, so I'd like to be able to figure out how to do it at a local level. There are hidden costs and subsidies that are borne by society with the way we feed ourselves today. The hidden costs include fuel, transportation subsidies, pesticides, regulation and testing, hazardous waste disposal and clean-up and environmental damage, and a big one is health problems. And we all know the costs of health problems in the way we are feeding ourselves at the moment. All those are reasons why we'd like to see Beelarong Community Farm grow. We do gain the satisfaction in knowing we are working and doing our bit to save the planet. Community projects formed at the grassroots level are addressing issues which are vitally important for humanity at this time. Beelarong means abundance. Our motto is, we care for people, care for the environment and return surplus. Beelarong Community Farm is an example of how members of the community can work together in harmony with each other and with nature. That's different to the main road of thought, but we are doing it. We are slowly learning how to grow our own food organically, locally. Hopefully, it will ignite you to have a go to grow your own food and not rely so much on the large supermarkets with their global trading practice and their reliance on food that is chemically grown.
Yearning for meaning in my life. something called the blue line. It's about accepting the reality of the world as it is now. It's about having courage. It's about taking a chance and forming links with people every day. It's about getting beyond the fear that controls our lives, little by little. It's about taking time to argue for a higher vision of human purpose. The actions of each of us can make a profound difference. As a result, we experience, little by little, growing excitement about being alive and passion for what we do. The world can be a better place for you and me because we can do this together.
Two ladies from the community centres. There's two different community centres in Morningside. One of them visited Northey Street and she found this low-lying land and thought it could happen out in Morningside as well. So they letter dropped and did a survey of the few streets around to see if there was any support for the idea. Once they found there was a bit of support, they went to council. We actually formed an association to give us a legal basis, worked with the community centres to get a grant for a tool shed, really then to get tools, just the basic tools and the water onto the site. The council put our water on, and we just went for grants, wrote submissions to get equipment.
Beelarong Community Farm is constructed on permaculture lines, and permaculture is a concept that was actually started in Australia by two people in the 70s. The two words that it came from were permanent agriculture, and it was to get back to a sustainable sort of system of agriculture and away from our take, use and waste mentality. As it's gone on and people have started working sustainably, permaculture's come to mean a little bit more. Now it's more about permanent culture, so it's really about creating a sustainable lifestyle. And there are lots of ways in which we've tried to do this at Beelarong. The part that you can probably see now is the Zone 1 area, and which is set up around our meeting house. Primarily, Beelarong is a community farm, so it's about bringing community people in. And a good way to do that is to have an area where people can meet, where they can eat together, have a cuppa together. And so as part of our little cluster in Zone 1, we have our building which has a cob oven, which is an earth oven, which we make lovely pizzas and breads and so on, barbecue, and raised garden beds where people who are disabled can come and sit and then have a cuppa so that everything's nice and handy. So the idea of talking about zones is that in permaculture we try to revolve things around their usage so that we're making the best use of resources with the least effort.
To have a
fresh herb garden on your veranda or somewhere like that, and one tap, the wastewater from one tap could easily help water that herb garden. Grease trap going on here. We've got a torture track and an aquatic filter through that middle section, and the end there is a sand filter and a reed bed. By the time it goes through there, it will have been sufficiently cleaned that it can go in the bottom of the herb bed. Okay, from here we've got great big rocks about this big up to about this. Then we've got a sand, and then we've got soil for about that much, and then on the top we've got a heavily mulch. So really we don't have to water this herb garden at all, and this was all from one kitchen sink. It works as an integrated tidal rock marsh. It's positioned in the house where the sun comes on it in the morning. The water can rise through evaporation and water the roots of these herbs. At night it goes down again. So we reckon we're copying nature by doing all this. Now nature seems to be able to do it pretty well on the edge of a creek.
So we would talk about zone 0 probably as being inside the house. Zone 1 is an area which is usually pretty close to the house, and that would be an area that's used intensively. So in our zone 1 we have our cooking facilities, our raised gardens, and our kitchen garden particularly, which is where we have vegetables and herbs that we can harvest to actually use in the kitchen. So everything that needs to be used each day is pretty much in the same area so that we don't have to walk too far. Just a little bit further out is the toilet. It's a composting toilet. We're trying to use as much sustainable energy as we can here. We have solar energy. We use only solar power for the cooking and for the refrigeration.
How about that? Another perfect sunny day in Queensland. This sign here is suggesting that this street light here with the solar panel on top generates all of its own power, collects the sunlight into its photovoltaic cell during the day. Up here, goes through its converters, stores all the energy in the batteries, so come night time you've got a full charge and this light fires up by itself off the energy that's been collected during the day. That sun's burning hot in the middle of space out there. We're reaching those boards right here.
We also have got 8 solar panels, and so we're self-sufficient in electricity, and people are attracted to that idea and want to see how it operates. With the Department of Mines and Energy grant, saw it in the paper, an ad to say they wanted a demonstration site, and we wrote a submission and managed to get it.
The surplus energy from the powerful sun is stored in batteries. It can be used for a variety of other things and can even be used to run a small household.
We're trying to give the impression that this could be a house in the suburbs, and if you had a house like this, maybe you could use the toilet. It doesn't have to be situated up high, it could be built into the house, but this one is special. We showcased a water flushing worm composting toilet, which was the first one in the Seward area in Brisbane, and that brought curious people to have a look, and so that helped. It has a big worm farm underneath. It goes through a couple of filtering systems, a steam filter, and then over there to that area there, which is enclosed by those rails. So instead of going out to sea, all the waste from this toilet here, causing problems somewhere else or massive problems somewhere else, we're growing this Bedama grass, which is providing us with mulch. In our opinion, one way of utilising that water to some good use in the local area.
So it's a composting toilet that actually has a settling area a little bit further over, which takes all the black water, which is what we call it toilet waste, and turns it back into usable products. Zone 2 is a little bit further out, and in this case it's a bit hard to see the boundaries because there are quite a lot of gardens along paths and spread out a little bit. But Zone 2 is actually the food forest or orchard area, and so we have fruit trees, and to make them a little bit more sustainable as well, we integrate those with herbs as companions. We also have ground covers. Common name is Aztec sweet herb, and you may have heard of stevia, and this is like a cousin to stevia. Each of the leaves is a sugar substitute, and it has supposedly 300 to 400 times the sugar content of cane sugar. It's got no calories, it's safe for diabetics, and it can be used, the leaves can be just chewed, or they can be used as a sugar substitute by being chopped or dried. So could take the place of sugar one day, and it's very easy to grow as a ground cover. It roots at the nodes along the ground, and it likes semi-shade and a moist position, so it's probably a good one to grow under a tank stand or somewhere where you can't grow more sun-loving herbs. So we have ponds to bring in predatory insects so that they help to control pests in the orchard, so that everything works together. As well as just the food production, we have a large mandala which we're just setting up, sort of on the border of Zone 1 and 2, which is for medicinal herbs. And so we're trying to show people how, instead of just going to a doctor and getting some antibiotics or some medicines, there are actually lots of herbs which can be used to promote health and to help with small ailments. For example, we have feverfew, of which the flowers can be used to help prevent headaches, and yarrow, which is a soothing tea. Lots of other herbs in there which do various things towards promoting health, so we're trying to show people how they can use herbs for health as well. The second ground cover that I wanted to point out was the pinto peanut. It's a very good one for nitrogen fixing, so it helps if it's put around plants in an orchard, and it's also very good at keeping weeds away. It will handle semi-shade, and it likes a moist soil, so it's an excellent general purpose ground cover for orchards. It's very easy to propagate, again, from root division, so you can just take a piece out that's got roots on and you can spread it as far as you want. Once it's established, it grows really quickly. Strawberries make a good border plant. We put around the edges things that can be plucked every day, so in season strawberries along the border will be easily accessible, and so we can harvest the fruits without any problems. And all the flowers around, and again to bring in bees and just to make a mixed bed so that we have a lot of different scents, and helps keep pests away as well. We're in the food forest at the moment, and there's just a couple of really interesting plants here that I'd like to mention. Pigeon pea, another very important plant in permaculture gardens. They have such a lot of uses. They're very fast growing. They can be harvested after 6 months, and they're harvested for their leaves, which are nitrogen fixing, and so it's wonderful as a mulch plant. Because it grows so quickly, it's an excellent quick hedge or a quick plant protector. And the peas themselves are edible. You can eat them raw, you can eat them cooked when they're green, and when they're dried, probably just about the stage that some of those are now, they're collected and they're used to make dal. So it's a very useful plant. As you can see, this is the bird and butterfly host area. This is a really exciting area to me. I'm just loving how it's coming together. We have a mixture of bird, bee and butterfly host plants. And in terms of butterfly hosts, it's very important to have the plants for the larvae of the butterfly, but also some nectar plants for the adult butterfly. And of course those nectar plants also attract birds and bees. So we have grevilleas, we have callistemons, and we have some banksias, and as well as that we have a lovely variety which are flowering now of shrubs, grasses, ground covers and small trees, which are all designed to bring in different types of butterflies and or bees and birds, so that it does a lot of things apart from the promoting the wildlife, the native wildlife. We also provide lovely flowers, and also with the bees coming in and the birds, we're helping to pollinate the garden. So that's another example of an area working towards the good of the whole garden. So the permaculture way is that everything helps everything else. We're in the food forest at the moment, and there's just a couple of really interesting plants here that I'd like to mention. First of all, you can see that perhaps that there's lemongrass around the borders, we'll add some comfrey to that, because lemongrass alternated with comfrey makes a really excellent border for a garden to keep grasses out. It's also a wonderful mulch plant, or both of them are great mulch plants to have, if you can harvest the lemongrass. The other thing that lemongrass does really well, apart from being able to be used for teas and Thai cooking, is that with the lemon scent it helps repel insects, so it keeps a lot away. And another really interesting fruit tree, also from South America or Central America, it's called the Panama berry. It's very fast growing. I actually put this in as a stick last year, about 30 centimetres high, and it's grown very fast. It's a lovely spreading tree. It actually has a sort of a weeping habit, a little bit like a mulberry, and the reason that I put it here was because there's a table and chairs just near it, and it's going to come up over and shade the table and chairs. Very easily pruned. Fruits twice a year. It's in flower at the moment. You may be able to see the little white flowers. The fruit is really interesting. It's only about the size of a large pea, but when it's ripe, it's a pearly pink colour, really tough skin, but inside is just like a very sweet plate of strawberries and cream. I call it my lolly tree because kids love to just harvest them and use the fruits as lollies. And it's also a useful one to grow over a chook pen, because the chooks quite like the fruits as well, so they can pick up all the ones that fall on the ground. So a really nice plant to have if you've got a bit of space. It grows fairly tall, but it's very easily pruned.
Well, we started off with really hard, dense black clay, so you have to have organic matter mixed in amongst that, and we found we had to build it up with compost as well as green manuring, big patches. So over the years we've gradually got one patch better, green manure. We've had rye, we've had mung beans. Rotary hoed an area up full of dense black clay, and we planted seeds galore. We've tried a few over the years: rye, mung beans, woolly podge veg, things like that. And it grows so thick and it smothers out all the weeds. And then when it's up a fair bit, we plough that green crop back into the soil, and that's adding nutrients back to the soil, or organic matter. So with the heavy clay soil we had to increase the organic matter inside it. It's got all the nutrients. You just have to have patience, because nature takes a while to convert from one thing to another. Yeah, at one stage we had a whole field of sprouts. You go up and buy some sprouts in a little packet at the supermarket. Well, we had this whole field full of sprouts. Yeah, well, they were nice too. We've used biodynamic preparations, and there's a lot of other biological preparations as well now out on the marketplace, and they all help bring up the organic matter, and it's lovely to see the result out of it. Yes, I think you get the basic ideas from what's happened, but I think you have to listen intently to whoever's around, whoever wants to do things, because if you can excite their passion to have a go and facilitate them being able to do things, that's what I think helps. So one city farm could look different to the other altogether by whoever you attract with what knowledge they've got and what they want to try and do. I think we all like to know we're connected, and when you hear other people's tales, and it's just as magic for me. So, the more people you meet, the more you understand, the more you know. People like social contact, and that's why they come to the farm, and acknowledging people where they are, and trying to see what motivates them, trying to enable what in their soul to happen, how to facilitate what other people want to happen.
Here's one of Beelarong's many little garden beds. True permacultural style, we're showing quite a blend of plants in the same area. We're not talking about traditional rows and columns. One plant, one type of plant growing in the same area, sometimes referred to as monoculture. One culture. This is permaculture. Mix it up, bit of biodiversity. Helps keep the pests down. Some plants benefit each other, the old companion plant system, what it's all about. Permaculture, using the resources of an area to their highest efficiency. How can you cross-reference and cross-link natural attributes of an area or even artificial attributes of an area for the most benefit.
The Bush Tucker area is another zone. It's probably about zone 4 here. It's an area that you don't have to visit very often because the Bush Tucker are from native plants. They don't need a lot of work or a lot of maintenance. That's why I love using native plants. And again, this is just a mixture of plants, but I think it's very important, you know, just to let people know that there are a lot of food in the bush that you can eat. I know that my property at Mullaney, when I wander through, I actually get excited when I can recognise some of the plants that I've learned by knowing about some bush tucker foods. Quite a mixture here. There are a few trees. Again, we have Banksias and Grevilleas, and they're edible by harvesting the flowers and soaking them in water. The Aborigines used to do that, and it made it like a sweet nectar drink, as well as the birds. If you can get some from the birds, you can. The Dianella's in flower at the moment. The other name for this is blue flax lily, and it gets a really pretty flower that's quite small, and it gets a pea which is exactly the same shade as that, and you can eat it and it actually tastes like a pea. So it clumps. It's a nice one to have around ponds or waterways as well. It'll handle the boggy area, and it's a nice hide and habitat for small frogs and lizards and so on. So again, it's got many uses. There are things like the lemon-scented myrtle, which you can use the leaves, harvest the leaves and make a tea. The native ginger, you can actually eat the shoots of that and eat the blue seeds, although they don't have a strong flavour. Various lily pillies, pretty much all the lily pillies are edible. Some of them are tastier than others. The Lemanii, which are ones that they often use as street trees, and they have a small red fruit which makes a delicious jam, as well as you can eat them fresh. So there's just a few ideas about the different sorts of plants that we can integrate and form a complete system, or as complete a system as possible. What I love about it particularly, I'm excited about bush foods and about native plants, because we've destroyed so much habitat of our native wildlife that it's really exciting to find out a few different ways that we can put back some of the habitat and help ourselves at the same time by pollinating our own plants that we can eat and making everything work together. And that's what this farm and other places like it are all about, and that is probably education and promoting to people the idea that they can do something themselves. Even if you don't have much room in your backyard, there's a small thing that you can probably do, a few plants you can grow. And if you don't have any space, then there are community gardens and farms now that, you know, most of them in most cities and most places. There's 2 or 3 in Brisbane. There's the Beelarong Community Farm at Morningside down by the creek, which is a really lovely place, and lots of exciting things happening here. Also on the north side there's Northey Street City Farm, and that's a great place as well, where lots is happening, education, small businesses and other enterprises. So it's creating a place where people can come back and feel as though they've got some sort of a community again, someone that they can work with and have share ideas with like-minded people. There are heaps of books about permaculture, and most large bookstores carry them now, and also organic places, and pretty much everyone there will have some books and some ideas about how you can get started. You don't have to know much about permaculture. I knew nothing when I started. I started with a group of school children and we just learnt together. So it's a bit intimidating if you try and become an expert immediately, but you don't have to be an expert. That's the good thing. You can just do little bits as you go and learn. And I'd encourage everybody to think about it, because for the reason that we have a lot of beautiful plants in this country, we have a lot of potential to be able to look after this land, and we can't waste it. I have grandchildren. I don't want them to grow up not ever knowing what some of our beautiful land looks like, because it's all been trashed. So, you know, ways to save water, ways to grow things organically, ways to put back some of the bush, all of those ideas and more you can get through the books, but also, you know, to come in person to these places and talk to people.
My name's Mark King from Conservation Volunteers Australia. We're a community-based organisation that engages grassroots community organisations in environmentally based projects, predominantly native revegetation. We have a team of Green Reserve guys here helping the Beelarong Community Farm establish the Zone 5, which was traditionally a zone kept aside in permaculture for native revegetation and native wildlife. The grass that grows here is quite a rare grass in the Brisbane area. The marine cooch, which is not found very often, generally being ripped up and replaced with more traditional exotic grasses. The job that the guys are doing here is creating a barrier around the Zone 5 or the marine cooch in the mangrove area for a few reasons. One is to create a physical barrier to stop the native grasses encroaching on the marine cooch, and also as a physical barrier for people to try and limit the amount of pedestrian use that the area gets, to give the native mangroves and some of the lower growing plants a chance to revegetate themselves. The plan is to heavily mulch the area, which we've already done. Then we'll be going through with predominantly native grasses, the main one being Lamandra longifolia, and planting those fairly densely around the barrier. Also be planting some melaleucas and passerina in some areas. So the idea is to provide habitat for some of the native frogs that are around the area. For example, the Lamandra longifolia is an ideal plant for providing a safe habitat for green tree frogs and some of the more endangered native frogs in Brisbane. This area here has been set aside to grow fruit trees in what will eventually become a food forest. So the idea is to replicate a natural forest and have 3 layers of food growing. So the first layer being the fruit trees will be the upper canopy. Below that will be smaller shrubs, grasses, vines and herbaceous plants growing along the forest floor and ground covers. So what we're doing here is moving away some of the woody mulch, composting around the base of the tree. So putting a nice healthy compost that's been enriched with a mineral fertiliser, and then we'll put a higher grade mulch directly around the tree. The trees were planted about 3 months ago, so we're giving them, I guess, their first feed, giving them a bit of a kickstart before summer kicks in. If someone wanted to volunteer their time with conservation volunteers, there's quite a few ways they can go about it. Probably the best way would be to look at our website, which is www.conservationvolunteers.com.au, and that'll give them an idea of all the contacts around Australia that they can contact to get involved. Absolutely enjoyable. We have people volunteering with us from all over the world, and the most common feedback we get is how much fun they actually had doing it. So yeah, you can have fun and help protect the planet at the same time.
It's because they address the whole of community issues is what I liked, instead of addressing narrow issues.
Yes, comfrey is a wonderful plant. Just look at those thick leaves, photosynthesizing continuously. You will see comfrey around garden beds. The denseness of its leaves keep out unwanted weeds and grasses from our garden. Comfrey mixed with water is a good natural fertilizer. It has been used on all the gardens here at Beelarong over the years and has worked well. To make an even deadlier mix, add some manure.
Oh, this will be a brew and a half, won't it?
Just fill it up with water and leave it sit for a while.
You really need more comfrey leaves on the top.
The other group we have visiting us is from the community centre. They send around a bus and they bring all the old people down for a cup of tea, and they've got a lot of expertise they help us with. They help us with seed saving. It's traditionally been the role of the older women in the society, this is going back centuries, to help with seed saving. And what we find are the old ladies who come for a cup of coffee like helping us extract the seeds. Very time consuming job. With the heritage seeds, it's helped turn Beelarong into abundance, and the old ladies in the community get an outing and they come down to the farm, and they've usually got some good gardening advice for us younger ones.
This is pak choy. Some of the old ladies helped me, and this was what was left over on the table. And I thought, I'll just throw it in there and see how we go. And just about 100% strike of the leftover. So, you know, if we can get our own local seeds, it's better. Yes.
Cucumber and put it in the hole. You get some sugarcane mulch, John.
Yep.
Get the moisture in and tag it. So if you'd like to write a tag with cucumber on it. Oh, it's good soil.
Yes and no. You do what you can at one time, and then you make a plan, and then you review it after a couple of years, and then you review it again after a couple of years. But yeah, it helps to have a bit of an idea, and the areas all marked out, future things that could happen. And it's amazing then to see how some bits come in before others manifest themselves. At the beginning, when you put all your ideas down, they're all good, but it's interesting to see in what order they take shape. as a modular homonodome. And we want to use that for a meditation area as well as a shop front. It'll be just multifunctional, so that's another area that we can expand because we've had people come along with that interest, so I'd like to bring into fruition that.
Here we have some beautiful resources. This is a natural pest control chart here. What it's talking about here is 27 common garden pests and cats, dogs, fleas, insects and animals. It's interesting to see cats and dogs because a lot of people have trouble with them. And they're 32 natural opponents, so it's biological pest control. And what?
These are cosmos. We have them growing quite a lot around here at Beelarong. We use them for insect control. The yellow and orange flowers, also the nasturtiums. The beneficial insects eat the predatory insects. So these ones will come along and eat the insects which eat your garden bed. We also use marigolds as insect control as well, because not only are they similar colours, but also the smell. They smell a bit like pyrethrum in the roots and the leaves. They will also discourage insects that eat the garden.
There's a lovely ground cover plant there called pepino. It's a South American one. It has those lovely purple and white solanum flowers on it at the moment, and it becomes a smallish fruit, probably about the size of a grapefruit, only an oval shape. It's pale yellow when it's ripe with purple stripes down it, very thin skin. It's lovely and juicy, very refreshing. It tastes like a cross between a rock melon and a honeydew melon. And the bush is very prolific. It'll bear 2 or 3 times a year. And it'll just creep along the ground, so you'll end up with lots of new plants. It's really good also as a ground cover to keep out grasses and weeds and so on. So it does quite a lot of jobs. Likes full sun, and it's an excellent plant. It lives for 4 or 5 years, and you'll get lots and lots of fruit out of it.
Oh, I think it's exciting, and have a go. And you learn all sorts, you meet all sorts, you can enhance your life and have a good time. Yeah, I already think I have. I've achieved what I hoped to achieve. Now I think it'll be over to somebody else to create what they want from this time onwards. I'm moving on to a huge project out at Sherwood Road. I'm not quite sure, but anything from 110 to 130 something hectares. Yeah, we've been forming links with other networks since about 1999, and it's just starting to come to fruition, I think. Well, Friends of the Earth are interested in community-supported agriculture, which is a similar sort of scheme. The idea to grow organic food inside a city or close to a city. And so we're forming links with Earth Charter and the university. It's promoting the idea that the community could be involved in there and seeing who's interested and who isn't. And it surprised me over the years how some groups were interested for a bit and then they drop out, and then some other groups are interested now. It's only persistence that wins in the end. You just have to persist a bit longer than giving up. You either give up or persist. It's only through persistence that you get there. Fear's everywhere. So you've got to be able to look at the problem, see if you can solve it and get past the fear. Fear arrives so often. It's very interesting to watch the fear. The fear of the street when we first started Beelarong. Fear of the street. Everybody didn't think we'd succeed, so it's interesting to watch people and their fears. I think you could pick up the apprehension from people that it was going to be too hard and we wouldn't get there. As you get there, then they start to realise it's happening and it's going to be okay, and you turn the fear around. But fear is everywhere. Used to be scared of the dark when I was young. What am I scared of now? Nothing much. Can't figure that one out. No, well, once you get into enjoying life, you figure out what's the next thing I can do to make it enjoyable, rather than worrying about what's you've got to fear about.
Hi, g'day. My name is Julio. I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about the drought, which is affect most of the parts of Australia. I've been driving from northwestern Victoria up to Brisbane, and then I drive to Bundaberg, and I could see so much land affected by the drought. I work for the Department of Natural Resources and Environment in the area of irrigation. I'd like to talk a little bit about the drought affecting all these areas. So I am taking this opportunity just to reflect myself and invite you to do a reflection to think about the extent of the drought and things we can do to prevent or to minimize the effect of this drought in different communities. As we were driving along New South Wales inland areas, it was absolutely horrified, my wife and I, really, because all these dead sheep, dead, they were dead just along the road, kilometers and kilometers of these dead sheep, just the skin at the moment, or because of the big droughts and hot sun, all you can see is the skins, So I just like to reflect a little bit about that because it's affecting really so many areas which I didn't know they were affected. Also, the drought is affecting the flora and fauna of our country, affecting the wildlife, affecting the farmers, affecting the crops, affecting even some contribution to the salinization of our land because of the evapotranspiration bringing a little bit the salts to the surface, so making saline soils more saline, more prone to be saline problems. As we know, there is a pattern which everybody knows is called El Niño effect, which happens about every 7 or 8 years. So we are in the middle of that Niño effect, and we have to respond to do some actions in order to minimize the effect of this situation to everybody. People living in the country towns, people living in the city, and specifically also farmers whose living depends on the crops and their animals and their production. As I said before, this is not only the problem of farmers, as we can see it in the newspapers, addressing the situation of the drought in the country towns or in the farm. This situation affects everybody, really. People living in the country towns, people living in the city, politicians, and everybody, citizens like us, all are affected by this situation. So better to think of things we can do in order to minimize the affection of this situation to everybody. We should be aware and think about how to minimize the use of this natural resource, the water, and use it more efficiently. Everybody living in the face of the earth, specifically here in Australia, is affected in some way by this drought. So we can have a look and we can think about things we can do in order to minimize, in order to use more efficiently our natural resources. In this case, for example, the water. If we need to use a timer to control the time of watering we're giving to our gardens, it's better to do it. The problem is not only for the farmer or for the politicians, or it's for everybody. And everybody should be involved in trying to solve or minimize this situation to the land. The response of the government and the people from the city doing this fundraising and special drought relief has been absolutely great, But we have the other situation when the product coming from the farmers or from the country towns or from the production areas coming to the city, we have a lot of products here, and many times that goes to waste, That goes to landfills because as a waste. So from the land to make a good crop, a good sweet corn, a good eggplant, a good cabbage or whatever, coming to the city, that production coming to the city, and then to supply, the people living here. And then we have to, as a city people, we have to in some way think about to returning this goodness to the land or to the farm, to the country. How can be done? That is the way maybe we should start to think and trying to find some solutions or some contribution to that situation. There is so much energy used by the farmers in order to produce fruit and veggies of good quality and send it to the city. So the utilization of this energy should be in some way returned to the land. And that's the way we'd like to see a new way of thinking, trying to improve, trying to give solutions to this situation. Doesn't matter if there is no drought, but there is a responsibility to use this energy back to the land, back to where it comes from. So a recycle of utilization of energy from the land to the human being and from the human being back to the land, which is going to satisfy our wildlife, going to satisfy our farmers, it's going to satisfy country towns, it's going to satisfy many people. And now we can ask ourselves how humans' dominance affecting relationship in nature. Sometimes we think ourselves as of the top of the ladder, and probably we are, but we think ourselves many times, if we don't exist, nobody else or nothing else will exist. And probably that is not true, because we can disappear from the face of the earth and still the plants, the animals, the birds, still they can live happily without us. But for the contrary, if plants and animals disappear from the earth, we won't survive. So we have to think about that and deep in ourselves, and in some way share a little bit more, be probably a little bit more kind each other, in order to survive better in this life and being in more balance with nature. So we can address so many problems if we step up for the ladder in kindness, in looking things in a different way. And then at the individual level, everybody can help. You can help too, everybody, by preserving the water in a more efficient way, not wasting it, by preserving our natural resources, the foliation of the land, of the trees, stop for a while that part, and also composting. Everybody should compost their waste, kitchen waste, leaves. Everybody should know a little bit more about composting, because that is a good way to reuse our energy and put it back to the ground. It's amazing when we can use our composting, which we already made it. We already tried to do something with composting and put it back to a plant, a fruit tree, a veggie garden, or ornamental, and then we can have that product, that veggie, that fruit, and we can enjoy it, because something of us was put there, our time, our waste, So that is excellent. Yes, in Australia we are very proud of our Great Dividing Range, which is a beautiful wonder. And at the same time, we have between the Great Dividing Range and the ocean, we have the cities, our cities. Most of our cities in Australia are along the coast. And in our cities, we have the other problem, which is the explosion of so many cars, so many people driving a car and giving that pollution to the air. Accumulates between the ocean and the Great Dividing Range and goes to the atmosphere and stay there for a while. At the same time, because of the Great Dividing Range, rain sometimes doesn't go inland. So in some way, we city people, we are very, very lucky to have so much rain, but also we have so much pollution. So to be good, if we do something about or address a little bit more the situation of the car pollution by sharing the car with our neighbor or people working with us and trying to find ways to minimize that transport problem. So we are very lucky in Australia, and we can make Australia a unique country in the world. It is at the moment, but could be much, much better, because we have so much natural resources here, but also they are very, very prone to degrade. So we have the problem of the drought, we have the problem of the natural resources degradation, we have the problem of the car pollution, but also we have the problem of the salinization, the salts coming from the ground and rising because of the evapotranspiration, and also because we chop down the trees in many parts of Australia in order to be productive for our crops. So we had to address also that problem of salinization. So what happened when the trees were chopped down, the natural action of the trees, so use the water from the water table and transpirate through the leaves and take it to the atmosphere. But when the trees were not trees there, so still the evapotranspiration goes on, but not in enough amount to keep in balance the salts and the water. So the water table starts to rise, and within also the salts. And every time the water table rises, the salt is deposited in the top layer, and so on. Every time more the water table more rise, more salt. At the end, we have many lands here in Australia, many areas where you can see all the salt on top of the surface. That land is productive for nothing, really. So in some valleys, you can use a little bit with salt-tolerant plants, but not as an extent to see the whole white powdery salt on top of the surface as we can see it in different parts of Australia. In Mildura, in Bundaberg, in everywhere. You can see small or big areas of land full of salt, doing nothing for us. How can we fix that? Is doing a reforestation program, helping all these community farms, helping some government actions in replanting trees, being more as a farmers too, leaving some areas free of deforestation, which is going to contribute to minimize the erosion, is going to contribute to minimize salinization, and also to be favorable for the birds and all the wildlife. So it's good to think and do actions in order to prevent more salinization in this land. As a human being, we are individualized people, and that's fine. There is nothing wrong with that. So we have to think ourselves how to fix the problem, because the politicians, they are not going to fix it. If they wanted to fix it, they will have done it before, but they haven't done it. So it's up to us to do it. So how can we do it? It's just getting together in different groups, doing, for example, community farm groups, and get together there and work. Every person should have a conscious thought to think about this and make a contribution, a positive contribution to this problem or this situation.
Burning so hard. I look within, I see something. There's a dragon deep within, deep within, deep within. A dragon deep within. Smoking on the outside, I see a fire.
bugger that. It's just too much hard work.
What are you doing, Anthony?
Ah, it's just too hot out there. It's just too much work. You know, it's just too hard.
What are you going to do instead of that, the gardening?
I don't know.
Come on, Anthony. Don't go and watch TV. Come on, I'll show you how to do it. It's easy.
All right, let's go.
Come on, I'll show you what we can do here. It's fun to do some gardening.
Yeah?
Yeah, it is.
What about all the digging and...
You don't have to dig. We can just put newspapers on the bottom and make a no-dig garden. You see how clever I am?
What I want to do is extend this garden from here all the way over to this side here.
Do you have anything to put down? Like a border?
I have some of these things. Will they do?
Oh yeah, that will be fine. Yeah, but we have to put the paper down first before you put the bricks.
I'll just go and get some paper out of the shed.
Ah, okay. We're going to use these pizza boxes because they can go in the recycling because they have food in it and you're not allowed to put them in it. But we can use it in the garden. To lie it down flat to stop the weeds from growing on the veggie garden. Okay, now I'll show you how to do it. You continue putting all the paper down, all along here.
What am I going to do about this pumpkin? Here.
We have to put paper underneath the pumpkin to protect the fruit. If not, the snails or other insects can get to them. I just get some paper and just lay it underneath them. Just careful, don't break the thing. Okay, and we have to move this little bit this way. Because you see all the pumpkins you have here? Look. You just turn it around. That way it doesn't go in the garden. The fruit. Just make sure that you overlap the paper and put 3 or 4 layers on it. And to stop the wind from blowing it, just lay some bricks on the top.
Alright, we've got all the paper down now. Let's water that down a bit. We're just going to place these bricks along the edge of the garden bed so we know what's the lawn and what's the garden bed. Just like this. Put them over the paper, put them on top. That'll lock the paper in and keep the weeds out of the garden. Alright, well we've got the border in there now. What do I do now? I've got the border down, I've got the paper down. What's the next step?
Now you can put all the dead leaves you have at the back there.
Yep.
And on the top of that you put the compost. and you just put the water on the top again. That way helps the leaves to break down quickly.
Alright, that's the whole bit covered in leaves. The leaves will break down and they will provide carbon, and the compost, veggie scraps and kitchen scraps and stuff, along with just plain dirt and along with more carbon. So the veggie matter and all those materials, they're nitrogen. So with nitrogen and carbon mixed to the soil, the plants just love it. Just been spreading the compost out along over the top of the leaves.
That compost is being in the composting for about 3 months.
And now we'll just water it in. The best time to water your plants is when the sun's just gone down, so it gets the whole night to soak in.
At the moment, Anthony is planting some mung seeds that helps put nitrogen back into the soil.
Okay, so there we had it.
You are so beautiful. I love you. Love you most dearly. What are you pulling off in there? You know Molly loves you, don't you? Hey, you know Molly loves you. God bless you. You've got to feed all that residue. As old as you get, you can always have a learning experience every day.
Well, that's the whole saying, if you stop learning, you might as well die, won't you?
Yes, you're never too old to learn. Learn to hold my tongue.
That's got to be hard.
That's a hard one, isn't it? Yeah. Know when to open it and when to close it. You get taught all the learn by experience.
Yeah, a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, make mistakes.
My mother.
My mother too. Mum taught me kindness, tolerance. Sometimes I fall by the wayside, but I'll be picking yourself up and get going again. Tolerance.
And patience.
Of race and creed. That's it.
Learn to live and let live.
And in life, everyone's your neighbour. Help one another as much as you can.
When my children were growing up, I used to teach them to others as you'd like them to do.
They regard themselves as superior to others.
I mean, it's all the peer pressure there is today. Which children find. That's the end result, what we want. They sort of vie against one another to get on top. I mean, some of them fall by the wayside, unfortunately.
I was born in Singapore. Educated me. I came to Australia when I was 14. I lived for 25 years in Papua New Guinea. Well, it's unfortunate, you know, the Papua New Guinea people before independence were the loveliest people on the face of this earth.
Yes.
Independence has ruined the country. It's been sold out. The forests are all being depleted. Well, they'd be in control of their own destiny, but I don't think that's the case. But it's not for me to say, is it?
Staying there now are the ones that
I left
put
there.
a lot of work in. Yeah.
I left there worse than a refugee. I left there with just the clothes I stood up in.
Yes, yes.
I lost my superannuation, which was worth $750,000. I came back to Australia absolutely broke. And at the age of 42, had to try and start looking around for a job.
Did they take this money from you?
The Australian government didn't give me my super because I'd switched over to the Papua New Guinea government, and they said you're not entitled. That's Mr. Bob Hawke.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Say no more. No, it was Mr. Hawke.
Wonder where that all went.
Yeah, well, he's got a nice $several million house in Sydney on the harbour.
Well, look at Mr. Keating, what he had, you know, all the things perks he got out.
Mr. Hawke shafted me. No, he's very good at that sort of thing. I don't know what we can get out, but unless I pick it out individually.
See, in lots of ways, I reckon that religion has become more into Christianity rather than individual religions. Like, you might be uniting, I'm Catholic, someone else is C of E, but these days, yeah, but these days you're not in different sects of religion. You try to live a Christian life, you know, do the right thing by your fellow man and love, fellow man, kindness.
I find forgiveness is sometimes hard.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, you can sort of go along with something, but it's very, very hard sometimes to come to terms with forgiveness.
Yeah, it's true.
You have to be a special person, I think, to turn the other cheek. Look at that chap on the TV last night with his brother with the two little kiddies that were killed up in New Guinea, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, you know,
In India, wasn't it? It was in India.
You know, he says, I forgive them, but I don't know that I could be that.
Well, he was a good...
Like, I always pray that I'll not be vindictive towards my husband and his other lady friend, you know, to try to get on with my life.
Well, I don't think I've ever completely forgiven my husband, no.
No.
Put it that way.
Well, my sister-in-law, she says I'm a fool because I said to her, if he turned up on the doorstep and he was in dire straits, I would accept him in, not to go back to the usual normal relationship, but I would not see him hurt or in any way or...
These don't last that long to go into a meal.
No.
Oh, crikey, no. Oh, no. Even the sugar snaps. Yeah.
That's the top of them.
So which are the sugar snaps?
The fat
The
ones.
thicker ones. The fat ones. Yeah.
Usually you take the top off.
Yeah.
Oh, here, have a nibble.
But put them in your what's and put them in your.
Have them semi-crispy.
To make up
Semi-crispy.
fries.
No,
So
you
can eat them like that.
take the end off.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And very sweet.
After we put the pigs out.
No.
We did.
Yes, that's a good pie. I can't get them shut.
That is beautiful, isn't
You
it?
can understand the kids picking them off as they come through, can't you?
That is so sweet and juicy.
Yeah. And they're
Making
good for you.
Chinese food with them. They
Can't
go
feed
in
it.
right
At the
just
end.
stir around
Oh,
quickly
right.
and then out.
Oh, they're terrific in stir fry.
Stir fries,
Cut them up with
Chinese chicken and
carrot.
vegetables.
Anything, yeah.
They, but they,
No, you peel it
Yeah.
and cut it up in cubes and cook it like potato.
Yeah, I just took those little funny pieces off and just threw it in with the potato.
They look like those old-fashioned.
And then peeled them out.
Those old-fashioned.
What are we talking about?
Kohlrabi.
You know, the mines that they used to float in the water. The
Yeah.
old-fashioned mines that used to have little spikes on them.
Yeah. They've got much the same
The other
flavour
are
as the
turnips.
potato. Yeah.
So you just chop this up like a potato, eh, and boil it up?
Yep.
Cut it up in cubes.
Yeah, well, I didn't. I just took these little bits off the edges and took the tail off and put it in and had it that way.
And that's a turnip there.
Yeah.
And what's the taste like?
Just much like potato, really, in a way. Not terribly different flavour, but not all that much. Not all that different.
But a cabbagey kind of taste, isn't it? Cabbagey kind of.
No.
Turnipy type.
Yeah, more between a turnip and a potato.
Yeah. I was quite surprised, yeah. So I'd never had it before. I know it's been around for years, but I've never ever had it because I had a husband. There's nothing like eating fresh vegetables and fresh food. Yeah, it's better than the supermarket stuff because half the time that's picked.
You don't know how long it's been there anyway.
It's been ripened in a cold room.
Refrigerator, yeah.
Same gas.
Shocking. It's not better without chemicals. Everything. You don't have that. You don't have to wash everything basically, do you? You know, like you do with the shop bought stuff.
What's happening, guys?
Amount of minerals were something like 103 milligrams per 100 grams of actual produce, and then on today's market with all the commercial produce that's been grown, it's only about 3%. So it's 3% of 100 milligrams, which is really bad. No vitamins and nutrients in it. And now Stereotech, which is a food irradiation plant, right, up in Narangba. Okay. Now, apparently they're building another food irradiation plant next to it, and they have got the license to do fruit and vegetables. So the fruit and vegetables that you buy in your supermarket today are just going to be like, there won't even be 3%. It'll be zapped, so they can last on the shelf a lot longer. And so it's like a sterilisation process. They say that this is your sterilisation process, and it's the ultimate way to go. And